week 2, session 2 of our Microsoft Office Specialist course in Excel. I believe that for those of you who missed the session on Wednesday, we have shared the recording for you to have access, and we are going to continue from there. If you look at what we did on Wednesday, to quickly do a quick recap, we continued off from our term sheet. We created some assumptions. We learned how to use the find and replace to quickly populate sections of this particular model. I think this is the model. Let me open it up here. Okay, so this is it. So we looked at different sections of that particular model, and then we tried to work on the assumptions. Okay, I think this is the wrong file. Sorry. I had initially worked on one and then given it a descriptive name. So this is the file that we worked on. We created assumptions, we applied cell styles, and then we created all these schedules. We created links and imported them. And today we are going to compute our budgeted sales and then try to finish off with this particular model. Now, before we go on, let's see if we have any questions. We can use 2 or 3 minutes to answer any questions that you do have. So let me ask, do you have any questions? If you have watched it, do you have any question that you want to ask? All right, so I believe we don't have any questions, so we are going to continue, and then we will move ahead to finish other aspects of the model. So today we are going to continue from where we left off. You would remember that we imported the unit sales for Belacqua, given all the various sizes, and then we also imported the prices. All we did was to introduce links. So we began with the equal sign, and then we created links. We linked whatever was on the assumption sheets here so that we can perform our calculations. Now, this brings us to one of the best practices that I have seen in financial modeling, and the analogy has to do with how chefs prepare food. So anytime a chef is preparing food, they will make sure that they have a recipe, and then based on that recipe, they will gather all their ingredients before they begin to do the cooking. So what we want to do here now is to compute the product of unit sales and the unit price to give us the budgeted sales for each of the products and their sizes. So that's exactly what we want to do at this time. Now, you can see that because we created a link, we just did a copy and paste and created a link. There are a few things that we will have to change here to align to what we want to do. there are things that we will do to remove unused rows, which are actually tested on the exam. So if you look at objective domain, so let's check the objective domain under section 3, under section 2, which is manage data cells and ranges. Now you see that you need to know how to insert and delete multiple columns and rows or rows. You need to also know how to insert and delete cells. But what we are going to do next is to insert and delete multiple columns or rows. So that's what we are going to do today. So I'm going to begin by marking off whatever we have done so far. Okay, let me keep it in yellow so that we'll know that by doing project 1, we were able to shade so many things in yellow. So that will be for the first project. So the next thing is that we want to insert and delete multiple columns or rows. Now, how do you do that in Excel? This is so basic and so simple. Okay, all you need to do is to select the row. In the case of a column, you select a column, you right click, and then you hit the delete key, and then it deletes. You can highlight multiple columns, right click, and then you delete. It's very simple. But at this point in time, we want to delete rows. We want to delete rows. So what we are going to do is that we are going to select where we have we have row 17, and then we delete it. So this is how we delete a row. Now we want to insert multiple rows here. So let's highlight these cells, these rows. We right click, and then we insert using the shortcut menu. So whatever we are going to do here now is to type in budgeted sales. Now we are not going to type these things in here manually. Okay, so we are going to highlight any of them, right click and copy. And then we are going to select this cell, right click, and then we paste as values. Now, when we paste as 1, 2, 3, we are going to paste the links. We don't need the links. We need just the text. So we are going to paste as values, 1, 2, 3, without any formatting. When you paste with this, the values and the number formatting, it will appear this way. But what we want to do is just to paste it as 1, 2, 3. Let's do it again. You can paste it and indicate what the value, the source formatting is going to be. So you see that over here, there are formulas and functions. So when I do Control tilde, you see that there are formulas and there are formulas here, or there are links. But when I come here, what I have pasted, it's pasted the values without the formula, and then has kept the number formatting. So you should know how to modify or use the paste options when you try to paste. So let's do that again. Let's try to paste using paste special, and then let's paste with values and number formatting. Now, I am going to change the keyword unit here to budgeting. So I am going to the Home tab, going to the Edit group, and then I'm going to choose Replace here. So I'm going to replace unit, which is the keyword I want to. I'm going to find unit, which is the keyword I am trying to replace, and then I'll replace it with budgeted. Sorry. So you see that this is actually done consistently. So I have changed this one here. So I am going to highlight, select this cell, and then put in the units. So the units are actually in Ghana cedis. So all that I'm going to do is to begin with my equal sign, select the operands. Okay, so in an operation, we have operands. You begin with the equal sign, you select the operand or the cell that you want to use in your operation, and then we want to multiply. So we're going to use the asterisk sign to do multiplication. So what we're going to do is that we're going to select Shift 8 on the keyboard to show the asterisk sign, and then we multiply it by the unit price. Now, instead of pressing enter, we want to press Control Enter. When you press Control Enter, it will accept the entry and stay there. And then all that you need to do is to use your autofill to drag it down and then drag it to the right. So that's how you use the autofill to copy formulas. And like I said, we are using relative referencing. Now let's put in a sum total. We've already introduced you to functions. A function is a shortcut to a formula, and the function deals with arguments. And also the function has a name. So we're going to use the sum function here. We begin with the equal sign. We type in the sum function. And then we press the tab key, or we double click the name of the function, and then we highlight the range, and then we close the bracket. Now remember that the last bracket in a formula or a function should always be black. When you open 10 brackets, you need to close it with 10 brackets and make sure that the last bracket is black. So that is a best practice, or that is a key, a shortcut to when you're using logical or conditional formulas or functions like the ifs, the and, the or, and those logical and comparative operators and operations. So we press Control Enter to stay there, and then we can drag and drop. So you see that the formula is saying that given the active cell in cell H22, I want you to move 2 columns to the right and then highlight or sum up all the cells that are adjacent, okay? All the contiguous cells from J22, K22, L22, M22. I want you to sum them up. When you are done, copy that relationship relatively into the rows below. So we have quickly done that right away. And this is very, very simple to do. So you can follow same, and then you can do that across. Now let me delete these 2 rows. So I'm going to select them and then delete them here. Let's try and do the same thing here. So this is what I did. We delete this one, this subheading, we don't need it. And then we try to insert rows. Select the rows and then hit insert. Okay. We highlight, Control C to copy. And then you paste special, go to paste special, and then use values and number formatting. So you pasted it with the number formatting. Now, the next thing that you're going to do is you're going to use your find and replace to replace units with budgeted. Okay. And then you can go ahead, put in your units of measurement. You use your autofill to drag it down. You put in your formula to multiply the units, sales, and the price. You drag it down, you drag it to the right, and then you put in your row total here. So when I press enter, you see that it accepted the entry and then moved to the next row. I have lost productivity. But if I had pressed Control Enter, I will stay there so that I can drag the fill handle and then bring it down here. So that is very, very simple for us to do. Now, I am going to use a different approach to quickly do that. And then you see the power of relative referencing. When you understand relative referencing or Excel's referencing system, you can do a whole lot. All you need to do is to look at the relationship in there. So look at what I'm going to do. The same structure that we have here. We have 4 rows, and then the next one is this product of the unit sales and the price. Now there is an empty row here, there's an empty row here. We are going to do the same thing. And you see how quick we can use the relative referencing through copy and paste. So look at it. I am going to delete the price, unit price assumptions for Venna here, so that I have just a single row here, right? And then what I'm going to do is that I am going to highlight row 37 all the way to 42, and then I'll hit copy. Or I can press Ctrl C to copy, okay? Now, after doing that, I would select this row 53, because there is no space beneath here. I've selected just the row after row 36, where the unit price for Baltic 1.5 liters is. So I am also going to select the same thing here at row 53. So I'm going to highlight that, right click, and then I am going to do insert copied cells. So when I insert the copied cells, you will see that automatically it would insert the new row and then use relative referencing to compute the budgeted sales for me. So you see that when I double click to audit the formula, it is picking Venna, the unit sales for Venna, the unit price for Venna, and then not for Baltic, even though I copied the Baltic formula. So all that I need to do here is to select these, and then I would rather change this time around. I am going to change Baltic. Then I'll change this one to Venna. And then the same thing gets done. Let me do that again here. So I can delete this row. So what I did was I selected this, deleted it to ensure that there is just a single row. I go up here, and then I select this formula. Remember that I selected this one together with this one. But look at what happens when I select just this one. And then I press Ctrl C on my keyboard to copy. You see the ants marching around it. And then I try to paste here. And then let's see whether we are picking right. So when we double click, you see that it is working just fine. But assuming that I pasted it here, you see that the formula will not be adding correctly because it would ignore, we didn't have an empty row here, and we are going to have a lot of, we are going to have our formulas shifting. So that is the risk that you can experience when you are using relative referencing. You need to ensure that you are looking at the relationship, and everything has to do with where the active cell really is. And once you're able to map that out perfectly, you see that it will be working just fine. So we have computed our budgeted sales for Belacqua. We've done same for Voltic. We've done same for Vena. We've done same for Awake. So now let's change this Voltic to Awake. So that's how you use the find and replace to ensure that we are working just fine. Now, last week we introduced, or no, on Wednesday, we introduced you to the format painter. So assuming that
Sorry,
I highlight.
I have a question.
Okay, you have a question. Okay. Let me take your question, please. All right, Cassian.
How are you?
Please go. Yeah, I'm doing well.
Yes,
How are you?
yes, I hear you. Sorry, can
Yeah,
you go
ahead.
back to that sheet?
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes,
So
where
which sheet?
you pasted and then the formulas.
Yeah, this one. Okay.
Yeah, the first paste, not the second one.
The first paste here.
No, I mean
Is
just
it?
close to that one. The first row is giving zeros.
Okay.
Yes,
This one.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
So it was here.
It's the same one,
So
yeah.
okay. So let me take that again. What I did was to select this, Control C, and then instead of leaving one row here, I rather paste on row 69, and then it's picking. So that's relative referencing.
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
now there. So suppose you create a row, an empty row between 68 and 69. Will the
No, it will not work.
yes, yeah,
So if
suppose
you
create
create an empty
an
row,
empty
it
yes,
will not work.
yeah.
It will not work. It will
Oh
not
yeah, it
work.
doesn't give you. Oh, that's what I
Yeah,
wanted
it
to
doesn't.
see. Okay,
It
thanks.
will not work.
Yeah,
Okay, welcome.
okay.
Okay, so now you've seen the power of relative referencing, and then today we are going to demonstrate absolute mixed referencing. So we are going to demonstrate mixed referencing before we even talk about absolute referencing. So you see how we are going to do that today, okay, to finish other sections of the model. Now let's move ahead to now create a total. Okay, so over here we have individual subtotals. Let's create a grand total for the budgeted sales for each product. So the first thing that we'll want to do is, where we have the unit sales assumptions here, I want us to change them to budgeted sales. Okay, so we're going to call this area the unit sales and price budget. So the unit sales and price budget. So while we have unit sales assumptions, I'm just going to do a quick find and replace. Find and replace is a very powerful tool. If you know how to use it, you can save a lot of time and then maintain consistency across the model. So we're going to do unit sales assumptions, and then we want to replace that with budgeted sales. Okay, budgeted sales. So I can do a replace all, And then you see that it has replaced every instance of the unit sales assumptions, and then we have it consistently done. When you are able to do things step by step, you can use Excel shortcuts to quickly effect changes very easily. Now, we also introduced you on Wednesday to the format painter. So I am going to apply the comma style here. So I apply my comma style and then reduce the decimal places. And then I pick my format painter. So instead of applying it this way, now when I select and I use the format painter, it is going to work just fine, okay? You can also work with the row. When I'm using the format painter, I love to use the row. So I can highlight all of this and then double and then click the format painter. When you click it once, you can apply it once. So you can paste it or you can brush it on the text, and then the block of formatting would also work fine. But if you want to use the format painter over and over again, you double click the format painter and then you switch it on. So I can apply it here so that I can get the comma separator. So I can apply it here. You see that the format painter is still on, and then I can apply it here again. When I am done, I can press the escape key or select the format painter again to switch it off. Okay, let me make it bigger so that you can see. So we've created our unit sales and price budgets for each of the products. Now, let's create a grand total for each one. So budgeted sales Belacqua, budgeted sales Baltic, budgeted sales Vena, budgeted sales Awake. So we're going to create that quickly. All we need to do is to insert a row. So we've learned how to do that on the objective domain. How do you insert multiple rows? We've learned that we can also insert a single row. So I have structured this training such that we will have an instance to practice something over and over again so that it will stick. So let's select row 26. And then we're going to type in budgeted sales. And then we do that. Now I'm going to show you a keystroke shortcut. So that keystroke shortcut is Control D, Control D, Control D. So when I select a cell and I hold the Control key and I press D, it will duplicate whatever we have in the previous cell above. Okay, you can do it for a row. You select row 26, you press Control D, and everything gets replicated. So I want to reduce a lot of typing so that we have consistency across the model. Now, you would understand later on in Excel that when you make typographical errors in your data, it can affect how pivot tables and even charts do work. So we want to be very careful about reducing a lot of typing or typing things consistently and then using the find and replace a lot to ensure that we don't have typographical errors. So this is what I am referring to. Excel sees budgeted sales with two spaces here, different from what we have up here. And you can see that if I introduce the len function, there's a function for counting the number of characters. It's telling me that one has 31 characters and this one has 32 characters. So we want to be very, very careful about typographical errors. And that can lead to a lot of errors in our spreadsheets. So I want to replicate budgeted sales by pressing Control D. And all that I need to remove is to delete the content, the 1.5 liter size. And then I want to get budgeted sales. And then you see that this function is already picking here. All I need to do is to use my sum function to add all these numbers from top to down. So I am going to begin with the sum function. Press the tab key or double click the name of the function, highlight it, and then close bracket and press Ctrl Enter. Now I can press Ctrl Shift right arrow to select to the right and then Ctrl R to fill the formula to the right. Now I'm going to do that again. There are keystroke shortcuts that I want you to learn here. I'm going to do same for Voltic. So I go to this cell. I insert a row here, go to row 44. I right click the mouse. I insert a row. I select row 43. And then I press Ctrl D on the keyboard to duplicate whatever it's in row 42. I remove the 1.5 liter description. I press Ctrl Enter to stay there. Now my row total formula is working just fine. So because of relative referencing. So all that I need to do is that I need to update this formula and then it's working. So I begin with the equal sign. I type in sum. I press the tab key. I highlight this. I close bracket. I press Ctrl Enter. Ctrl Shift right arrow. Ctrl R to fill to the right. Very simple. Very, very simple. Is someone's hand up again? Okay, so it means that everyone is clear regarding that. Now let's do it again. I'm going to do it again. Now, because the formula I have put here is just right. One of the things that I can do is to copy this formula. So I can copy this formula just like we did, or copy the entire row 43, and then select row 60 and then insert the copied cells here. And then relative referencing will work just fine. Okay, all that I need to do is to select this, press Ctrl D to duplicate. I double click and then I clean that. Let's do that again. Relative referencing. I select row 60, Ctrl C, and then I paste here. This time around, there's no need to insert. I'll just right click and then I will paste. So you can do Ctrl V on the keyboard. Ctrl C, Ctrl V to paste. So I do Ctrl D here, and then I wipe this one out. So these are all keystroke shortcuts that you can learn to use over and over again without stressing. What did we do? We just we could have typed in budgeted sales, Bell, Aqua. All that we wanted to avoid was the risk of making any data entry errors. Why do you reinvent the wheel if you can just use a keystroke shortcut? So please put that keystroke shortcut in your books, Control D. When you press Control D, it helps you to fill down or to duplicate content Hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can. We can. Yeah.
Okay. In fact, I think there was some network related challenges, so sorry for that. Okay, so let's as we resume, so we left off by saying that we need to know how to understand relative referencing and so many techniques that we can deploy to do just that. Now we're going to use the format painter to copy the bold formatting. Okay, so I am going to bolden this one. Okay, so after boldening it, okay, or let's say that we can apply this cell style. Assuming that I want to apply this cell style. The name of the cell style is total. So I have selected it, and then you can see that it is showing total. Alternatively, you can edit or modify this by going to the format painter, going to the format cells dialog box, and then doing just that. Okay, so it all depends on the formatting choices that you want to use. I just want to keep it bolded, and then I'll select row 26, double click my format painter, and then try to apply it on the row label, not on the cell. Because if I try to apply it on the cell, I'll have an error. Try and apply it on the row. So the copy area and the paste area must be commensurate, or they must be the same. Now, another thing that we would want to find out is that what is the total budgeted sales? What is the total budgeted sales for all the three products? Okay, so for all the three products, what are the total budgeted sales? Now, I am going to introduce you to what we call row anchoring. Row anchoring. I'm going to introduce you to what we call row anchoring. Now, row anchoring is one type of mixed referencing. So now we understand relative referencing very well, and then we are moving to understand mixed referencing. So if you come to this area, it says that you need to insert relative, absolute, and mixed referencing. So I want you to understand mixed referencing. So there are two types of mixed referencing. We have row anchoring and column anchoring. So we have a song that we often sing that, will your anchor hold in the storms of life? So for those that are on the seas, a ship will have an anchor, okay? And that anchor becomes a real lifesaver when the seas become very, very boisterous, and then you need to ensure that the ship remains stable or is able to withstand the winds or the storm that we have on the seas. You will need to lower your anchor so that you can hold the ship firmly. So when we want to anchor, we can anchor a cell, we can anchor the entire row, we can anchor a column. And what we use to create this anchoring has to do with the $sign. So the $sign is what we use to implement either absolute referencing or relative referencing. So this is the whole concept. We said that a cell, that's why when we're doing the technical orientation or overview of Excel, I took my time to explain what a cell is. So we say that a cell is the intersection of the column letter and the row number. So when I say cell C3, or currently I am in cell E80, this is the column letter, and then this is the row number. Now, when I put my dollar sign here in front of the column letter, Shift 4, I have created what we call column anchoring. And this is a type of mixed referencing. The next one has to do with putting the dollar sign in front of the row number. When I put the dollar sign in front of the row number, I am creating what we call row anchoring. When I put the dollar sign in front of the column letter and the row number, then I have created what we call absolute referencing. So the dollar sign and where you place it makes the difference. So understand that the makeup of a cell is the column letter and the row number. When you put a dollar sign in front of the column letter, you make that column absolute. It means that when I begin to copy formulas from top to down or from left to right, I need to ensure that I am using the same column. When I put the dollar sign in front of the row number, I need to ensure that anytime I'm moving to the right or to the left, top or down, the row remains the same. But immediately I put a column, I put the dollar sign in front of the column letter and the row number, I make the entire cell absolute. So right now I am going to create row anchoring in order to get my grand total for the budgeted sales. So this is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to begin with the equal sign, scroll up and pick Bell Aqua, and then go to the formula bar here. If you're a beginner, take your time and do it step by step. I remember using this for a corporate training for a very big multimedia house in Ghana, and it was very, very helpful, taking it step by step. So select the cell, begin with the equal sign, select the cell, and then go into the formula bar and then place the dollar sign in front of the row number like this, and then press enter. So I have created a link, but I have applied row anchoring. Now, what is the advantage of doing row anchoring? You can see the advantage here when I compare it with another link without a row anchor or without making the row number absolute. So I begin with the equal sign and then I select Bell Aqua again and then I press enter. The two of them are the same. There are no differences, but look at what happens when I copy and paste. So when I copy this two and then I paste here, what happens is that because of row anchoring, budgeted sales BELAPA remains the same because I still want to reference it. I want to use it over and over again. And that is one of the best practices in financial modeling. Okay, so when you don't apply the row anchor, then it means that you want to leverage relative referencing, and that would also work fine. Remember that when we're creating the budgeted sales for each of the brands, we used relative referencing to our advantage. But at this point in time, we want to use each number that we have over and over again, or each grand total that we have over and over again. And that is why we want to apply row anchoring. So let's do that here. And then it will become very clearer. So we've done that, and then we put the $ here. So all that I need to do is to press Control, Shift, and right arrow to select all the cells as I hit the wall, and then I press Control R to fill it to the right. Okay, now let's do same for Voltic. So we select budgeted sales for Voltic. We go into the formula bar, and then we put the $ in front of the row number. And then we press Enter. We select it, we press Control Shift right arrow to select, Control R as a keystroke shortcut to fill it to the right. Now let's do that again for Vena. We begin with the equal sign. We select Vena. We apply our row anchoring. We press Enter. Let's do same for a week. Budgeted sales for a week. We place the $ here. Control Enter to stay there. Now I can select the two of them, press Control Shift right arrow, Control R to fill all of them to the right. Okay. Now I can do my grand total, which is budgeted sales. I go in here to put in the units in column G. So the units is Ghana cedis. Now you see that when I begin to type G, what happens here is that I am going to have autocomplete appearing. So I can just hit the tab key, and then I can put my totals here. So a keystroke shortcut for quickly inserting the sum function is what we call the auto sum. So if you want to do an auto sum, all you need to do is to select a cell, and then you can have whatever you want to add at the top. You go to the Home tab, you go to the editing group, and then you choose this command. And then the keystroke shortcut is Alt plus the equal sign. So when I select auto sum, you see that automatically it would suggest the arguments of the sum function for me. I can press Control Enter, press Control Shift right arrow, Control R to fill it to the right. I can do same here. I can select this. I can go to auto sum. I don't want to add from top to down. I want to add from right to left, from left to right, so I can highlight it like this, then press Control Enter. And then I can highlight all of this, and then I can apply the bold function. So if you ask me that, what is the total budgeted sales for Abramex Industries Limited for the entire year? for 2025, I can boast of over 2 million Ghana cedis. 2 million Ghana cedis. And this is very impressive sales. And the units is in Ghana cedis. Now, this information that we have here can be all that a very big company needs to manage its budget for its products. So if it has about 10 or 20 product categories, we'll have a very long sheet with this information. Okay, let me select this row and apply this here. So we've learned how to apply row anchoring. Now, the beautiful thing is that I can select VLOOKUP here, Control C, and paste it, and paste it, and paste it, and use it over and over again. We want to reuse the code. So if you look at the recent drive or emerging trends regarding ESG, environmental, social, and governance factors or issues, you see that we want to go green, we want to go sustainable. Even in your spreadsheets, you can learn to apply such concepts. So we are looking at renewables, we are looking at recycling, we are looking at using things over and over again. And one way of doing that is applying row anchoring in your spreadsheet. When you do row anchoring, you can use a particular line item over and over again in your financial model. All right, now based on what we have done here, this is our unit sales and price budget. You see that we have progressively built it step by step up until we got to this point. And this is very, very impressive for us. All right, let's take, do we have any question before we look at row anchoring? And then we are done with mixed referencing. Do we have any question on row anchoring or whatever we have done today? Do we have
a question?
All right, Belinda.
With the row anchoring, from the explanation, what I get is that to maintain the cell reference on different cells, that's why we use row anchoring. Am I right?
You're right. That's in other words. You're right.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Thank you. Just want a confirmation.
Welcome. If you look at some of the models I built for transactions, I have so many row anchoring in there. It's actually part of a standard. It's actually part of a standard. So when you learn it, you are learning it right. Okay. All right. Let's look at column anchoring. Let's look at column anchoring next. We're going to look at column anchoring, and we're going to see how it's going to work for us. Now, we need to get something to apply it to make it nice. So if you look here, you see that we have assumptions about our unit sales and price assumptions. So we are going to look at the next thing in our case study. Our case study requires that we prepare a sales composition budget. We need to prepare a sales budget. Now, anytime you're looking at sales composition, you're basically trying to find out which percentage or proportion of your sales is in cash and which proportion of your sales is on credit. Okay, so if you look at what AIL is doing, it sells 60% of its inventory of bottled water in cash to customers. And every business needs a lot of cash. When you don't have cash and you are even profitable, you can collapse. So in finance, for some of us in finance, we like cash flow rather than profit. We know that profit may become cash flow in about 3 or 6 months' time. But if you're a company and then you don't have cash on the books, you use cash to pay the bills. That is why we often say cash is king. So we like cash. We like the money today. We like it now. We want the money now rather than getting the money in future. Anytime I need to forego consumption now in order to make some kind of an investment or make an advancement to you, you need to compensate me for that. So basically for Abromex Industries Limited, their credit policy may encourage sales in very large volumes, because if you're going to buy just 1 pack of bottled water, I may not advance a net 30-day credit terms to you. But maybe if you are buying about 200 or 100 packs, then I can advance credit based on your credit worthiness or your credit score, and then I will try and chase you for cash. So in your budget, you need to ensure that you have an operating budget. You also have that budget reflected in your sales. How are you going to reflected in your cash budget? So we'll have a sales and collections budget, and then you should have a cash budget that reflects how you are collecting your cash from your sales and any other disbursements that we are doing. But this training is not about our doing budgeting in depth or doing financial modeling in depth. We are trying to look at a practical example to cover the objective domain on the MOS exam that we are doing. So let's go ahead and then create our sales composition budget. Now we need assumptions. Now you can see that the assumptions are that we have 60% of sales in cash and 40% on credits, and we are going to collect after 30 days. So we are going to put all those assumptions in our model. Now, if you look at what we said here regarding our model, we indicated that every column needs a specific purpose. So we are going to see how to use column F in our financial model. Now we've demonstrated A, B, C, E, G, H, and also J all the way to XFD. So there are a few columns that we need to touch on: column D, column F, and probably column I in the model that we are building. So let's go to our assumption sheet, and then let's create a new section. So the new subsection that we are creating, we're just going to select row 9, Control C. Okay, and then we scroll down here. We leave 1 row, and then we paste it here. And then we go to cell B59, where we have the content, and then type in sales composition assumptions. So in terms of our sales composition assumptions, there are 2 of them. So one of them is the cash sales as a percentage of revenues. Let me be very specific. So as a percentage of budgeted sales. And then we also,
please.
okay, what's the question?
The copy of the from that side to the cell
This row.
E59.
Okay.
Yes.
Good.
Can't we? Do we need to copy, since we just changed the name there?
The reason that we did the copying is that we also have a certain formatting. Okay, we have a gray shading here. So if I increase the font, you see that there is a gray shading that we have applied to the background to stand out. So the main heading is black text white font color. Okay, black background or fill color, black text or font color. And then over here we have a gray fill color or background color, and then dark text color. So we wanted to copy the entire formatting together with the text, and then just change the text there to maintain consistency. When I'm building models, I love to maintain consistency. So I also want you to learn that. And it's the same thing that the exam would actually test you on. Now you see that employers will pick your set, and then they feel confidence that you're a Microsoft Office specialist, not because you've passed some kind of exam, but they feel that you have what it takes to deliver on the job. So you need to get some kind of a framework that you'll be using across. So cash sales as a percentage of budgeted sales, I'm going to press Control D to replicate the same thing and then change the cash to credit sales. So it's the same thing. So cash sales as a percentage of budgeted sales, credit sales as a percentage of budgeted sales. Now, our credit policy is just for 40% of the sales. So it means that the percentage is 60. So we can enter 60% here and then 40% here. Now, instead of going this route, it will rather be proper, because it is possible that you can enter 70% here and forget to reduce this one to 30%. So why don't you make it dynamic, so that whatever you key in for the cash sales would be reflective in the credit sales assumption. So what we can do here is to make this a formula rather than a hard-coded number. So we're just going to begin with the equal sign, and then we'll do 1 minus cell G61, and then we press Control Enter. So what happens is that anytime I change this one to 80%, then you know very well that it is going to modify your credit sales policy. If I make here 30%, so you're making your model dynamic. Okay, so this is a better way to go. So I'm going to put 60% here, and then automatically I have 40%. So that when you put mistakenly 120% here, then you know that you are having an error. Okay, the maximum that you can have here is 100%. So let's keep at 60% here. Now, the difference between these two cells is that this contains a formula, and then this contains an input. So in our model, our color coding scheme indicates that we are applying a yellow fill, this cell style here, for our inputs. Now, when we apply this, this is going to be in decimals, but we need it in percentages. So what we're going to do is that we're going to go to our cell styles, and then we can duplicate this one. By modify, we can say we duplicate this, and then we name this. Okay, we can put a percentage here. So I can put 100 and then add a percentage here. Go to the number format. So I'm going to the format cells dialog box here. I go to percentage. In fact, this is examinable, so you need to know how to pick items from the format cells dialog box. So I go to percentage, and then I choose with 2 decimal places. It's already done. And then I say, okay. So now I have created a new style from an existing style, and then I am applying it here very easily. So over here, I know that this is an input. This contains a formula. So I am not going to play with it. Okay, you can increase the decimal places here to also align perfectly. Okay, now you see that in column G is for units of measurements. It is not for constants. So this information that we have here should have been entered here, but this has been done deliberately so that we can check off how to delete and insert cells. So this is it. We want to know how to delete cells. So how do we delete cells? When you delete a cell, it works just like when you delete a cell, it works just like moving content. So this is what I am explaining. When I highlight this and then I hit delete on my keyboard, you see that the formatting still remains. So I deleted content, but not the cell. So the delete key on the keyboard deletes content. It doesn't delete a cell. So when you want to delete a cell in its entirety, you need to highlight it, right click, and then you hit the delete key. And then this delete dialog box would appear. It will ask you, do you want to shift cells to the left? Do you want to shift cells to upwards? Do you want to delete the entire row or the entire column? So what we want to do is to shift cells to the left. So this is what I meant by anytime you delete content, it's more like you are moving content. So look at it. So when I choose OK, what happens is that whatever is here gets shifted. Let me undo it. And then let's put some kind of content here. When I highlight this and then I hit delete on the keyboard, you see that it will shift content to the left. And this can sometimes affect the layout of your spreadsheet. Okay. But I can do the same thing here by highlighting these cells rather. I right click them and then I delete so that I can shift these ones to the left. And then I can put my units of measurements here as percentages. So I want you to understand the fact that you can use the cells, you can use the mouse to actually highlight cells and delete. Delete key on the keyboard deletes content. But when you want to delete a cell, you need to highlight them with the mouse and then you can delete them, or you can use your keystroke shortcuts to do that. Now that I have my sales composition assumptions, let's go ahead to create a new section called the sales compositions budget. So I'm going to select this. We've created the unit sales and price budget already. So I scroll downwards, I highlight row 85, and then I type in sales composition budget. Now remember that I'm using sentence case. It is only S that is capitalized. So I want to maintain that consistency across. Sales composition budget. Now for the sales composition budget, I can choose to go granular by picking each budgeted sales and then computing its sales composition. So if we have divisions or you have a big firm and the sales is such that you have employees who are taking care of a particular brand in a particular geography or something, then you would be interested, or they will be interested in that granularity or in that detail. But now we are not interested in that detail. We just want to pick budgeted sales and look at its composition. That is why we created the grand total on row 83. So I'm going to do my row anchoring. So I begin with my equal sign. I select budgeted sales. I put the $ in front of the row number. Press Ctrl Enter. press Control Shift right arrow, Control R to fill it to the right, and then I have it here, and I can use it over and over again. Now I am going to import, or I'm going to export these assumptions here. So the first sub heading that I want to create here, I'm going to insert a new row here. I'm going to call this cash sales as a percentage of budgeted sales. So this is the sub heading that I am creating in column C. So I need my budgeted sales. I begin with the equal sign. I go to my assumption sheet. I pick cash sales as a percentage of sales, and then I will go into the formula bar. This is the equal sign. This is the name of the sheet, which ends with the exclamation sign. And then before row 61, I'll place my $sign there. And then I press enter. So what have I done? I am going to fill it to the right, and then I would format it. I will apply my style here. So let's say that I can, instead of creating a new style, in the interest of time, let me select row 88, use my format painter to apply it, and then highlight these two, and then I would highlight the two of them, and then I would apply my blue formatting because I am importing, and then I would apply my percent style. So you can create a cell style to even be more quicker and faster, but alternatively, you can also do it this way. Now, the next thing that I need to put here is my cash sales as a percentage of budgeted sales. Or let's say I can just call it cash sales. I put my unit of measurement here, and then I am going to apply what we call column anchoring. So what do I want to do here? I want to put in a formula such that it would pick the budgeted sales and always multiply it with the 60%, with the 60% without any error. Now look at what happens when I do not apply column anchoring. When I begin with the equal sign and I select this, and then I multiply it by this 60%, and I press Control Enter. The answer is very correct. Now, when I drag it to the right, you see that I begin to have errors. Now, what is happening? When I copied the formula to the right, you see that it's working fine in the first cell. Relative referencing is taking place. So because I moved the active cell to the next cell, it is looking at, let's interpret it. So what we are saying is look at two cells above the active cell, and then multiply it by one row above, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 columns to the left. So when you move your active cell here, or you copy the formula here, and you double click, you see that relative referencing is taking place. Go 2 rows above, stay in the same column, and then pick it as the first operand. Now multiply it by 4 columns to the left. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And then move 1 row above. So if you don't want the column to be shifting. So over here, you see that the column has moved here. The column has moved here. This is correct, but we don't want this to be moving. That is where you apply what we call column anchoring. So we are in column J. Anytime we put a constant in column F, you put the $ in front of the column letter. And when you put the $ in front of the column letter, you have made the column reference absolute. And that is another type of mixed referencing. And then all you need to do is to fill it to the right. And then you can put your sum total here. You can reduce the decimal places, or you can just pick this and then apply it. Now let's do it again. Let's do it again. Let's do it again. I want to create credit sales as a percentage of budgeted sales. All I need to do, because of row anchoring, I can just select row 88, Control C, go to row 93, Control V to paste. And the relative referencing will not take place because I have applied row anchoring. Now I am going to reference credit sales as a percentage of budgeted sales. I put in my $, press enter, and then I try to fill it to the right. Because I have applied my formatting here, I can highlight it, and then use the format painter to also do the same formatting. Now let's do column anchoring again. We want to create credit sales. So we call this credit sales. We put here our unit of measurement. We begin with the equal sign. We select J times F94. We go into the formula bar, and then we place the $ in front of the column letter F. Press Control Enter, Control Shift right arrow, Control R to fill it to the right, and then we can put in our sum total function. The sum total function, the keystroke shortcut is Alt equals. So when you combine Alt equals, you have it. Control Shift right arrow, press Enter. Now, if you want consistent formatting, you can pick whatever you have formatted right, use the format painter, and apply it again. Now, you can see that whatever we have done here, we have structured the course such that when we do something or when we teach something, we can do it over and over and over and over again so that the concepts would quickly stick in our minds. We are going to apply row anchoring and column anchoring again so that it becomes even more clearer. But before we do that, let's take a quick break. And then when we are back from the break, we would continue and then wrap up. So today I'm just going, because we had a break in the connectivity, I'll just say that let's take a 5 minutes break. Let's drink some water, pick a phone call, and then quickly return in 6 minutes so that when it is 7:30 GMT, we can continue and finish with this case study. Thank you very much. We quickly want to resume and then continue doing what we were doing. We talked about column anchoring and then row anchoring. Now, I'm sure you may be asking that if you look at column I, you see some asterisks in there. Now, anytime you see an asterisk showing like this, then Excel is trying to tell you that your column width is too small. So probably you need to adjust it. So immediately you adjust it, you see that that hashtag will disappear. So that's one way of resolving it. So let me undo. The second way to resolve it is to reduce your zoom level. So when I reduce my zoom level, you see that those hashtags will disappear. When I increase it, they would appear. And when they do appear like this, you will then have to increase your column width to remove that. So that is why those hashtags are appearing. All right. Let's move ahead to the next budget that we want to create. We've created our sales composition budget. Let's look at the next kind of budget that we need to create. We need to create a cash collections budget, a cash collections budget. Now, how do we create a cash collections budget? So anytime you are creating the cash collections budget, you are basically looking at all your cash sales plus all the credit sales that you collect in a particular period. So let's say that I am in Q1. I have sold something. I've sold a certain number of bottled water in terms of packs to a customer. And the customer has net 30 days. So if I sell it in January, let's say I assume that I sold it on January 1st, then it means that on the 31st of January, I would have to provide the person, there's going to be an invoice. Once I sell it on the 1st of January, I'm going to prepare an invoice and then give to the customer and say that after 30 days, you will need to pay me cash. So on the 31st or on the 1st of February, when the customer pays, then the customer will give me a receipt to show evidence of payment, maybe through direct transfer or through a check. Once I'm able to cash out, it means that I have collected cash on the goods that I sold on account to him. Okay, or I sold on credit to him. So what it means is that when I sell to this same customer in February, and then he'll pay me at the end, or let's say in the following month. So at the end of March, you see that if he hasn't paid whatever he bought in the month of February, then it would be outstanding. So what it means is that over a quarter, when you sell to a particular customer 3 times, you will collect 2 and then 1 will be outstanding. So basically, that is what it means by the net 30 days. So the assumption that we are going to do is that we need to look at our net 30 days assumption, and then we will compare that to the amount or the number of days that we have in a quarter. So in the securities markets or in the let's say in the short-term securities market, where we are doing with a lot of short-term marketable securities with maturities less than a year. For instance, those that are purchasing treasury bills, those that are doing the 30 days, the 91 days, the 182 days, the precision in terms of the dates are very important. But for our assumption of the number of days in a quarter, instead of using 91, we are going to use 90. And we are assuming that every month contains just 30 days. So this is a very important assumption. I remember when we are modeling debt on a transaction, your day count is very, very important. You can choose to use an actual where you are computing interest on a daily basis. And then you're assuming that the year can be 360 days, or the year can be 365 days, or the year can be 366 days. Even a day can make a difference if the amount of interest that is accruing on, let's say, a $1 billion facility, it can make a difference. But for the purposes of this training, we are assuming that every month contains 30 days on average. And then for that matter, we can assume that with a net 30 days policy, we would have only 30 days outstanding at the end of a particular quarter. So let's try playing with the numbers to see exactly what we are referring to. So I am going to create another section here. And then we are going to call it collections assumptions. So one of the things that we will put here is the days sales outstanding. Sorry. The days sales outstanding, which is also called the DSO. So our DSO is going to be 30 days, net 30 days. And the unit of measurement is days. And then we can apply our number format here, and then reduce the decimal places. Okay. There are better ways of doing this. You can create a cell style so that you use it. Sorry, you use it over and over again. Okay, the next thing has to do with the days per quarter. So the number of days in a quarter is also going to be 90 days. Okay. So we can apply the same thing here to indicate that this is an input cell. All right. So let's go to our cash collections from customers' budget. So cash collections from customers' budget. Okay, so what are the ingredients? So the ingredients are basically our cash sales. Okay, so we begin with the equal sign, and then we select cash sales, and then we put the $ in front the row number. Now there's a keystroke shortcut for doing that, and that is F4. So on the keyboard, when you select F4, you select a cell reference, and then you hit F4 on the keyboard. For the mouse, for the keyboard that I am using, I need to combine the function key or the FN key before I can have F4. So when I combine my function key, which is FN, next to my control key. In your case, it could be that you can just press the F4 key and it will work. I need to hold the FN key and then hit F4. You see that when I hit F4, the $2 signs would appear, one before the column letter and another before the row number. When I press FN F4, or in your case, just F4, you see that we will toggle to row anchoring. When I press F4 again, you toggle to column anchoring. When I press F4 again, you revert to relative referencing. So a keystroke shortcut for choosing the referencing that is required here is to press the F4 key once for absolute referencing, twice for row anchoring, thrice for column anchoring. And then when you press it again, it brings you to relative references. So I need row anchoring. So I press it twice. I press Control Enter to stay there. And then I can press Control Shift right arrow, Control R to fill to the right. That Control Shift right arrow, Control R is the same as using your mouse to grab the fill handle and then dragging it all the way to the right. You see, it is long. Sometimes you can go, you see, you can go upwards, you can go downwards, or you can go past that. Okay, if you're not careful, it can just slide to an area that you do not expect, but it is just going to do the same thing. But we want to be efficient, so we love to use the Control Shift right arrow, Control R to fill to the right as a keystroke shortcut. So we have created a row anchor here, a mixed reference, which references this cell, okay, or this row. So that best practice is saying that we need to enter data once and then refer to it over and over again. We do not have to create what we call daisy chains. When you create a daisy chain, it's a bad spreadsheet practice. And when the chain is broken, you would have ref errors in your financial model or spreadsheet. So you need to keep an eye on that. Now, the next item that we are going to add is going to be our credit sales collected in that particular period. So credit sales collected. So let's put our unit of measurement here. Now, in financial modeling, there are times when you want to compute something, but you don't have all that you need to complete that calculation. So let me give you an example. In a typical transaction, okay, you would have those that will be looking at the operational aspects of your spreadsheet. You have those that will be looking at the finance aspects of your spreadsheet. You have those that will be looking at your tax components in the spreadsheet. You have those that will be looking at your forecasts. You have those that will be looking at your valuation, if you have a valuation in there. And then you have those that will even be reviewing the model. So assuming that I am working on my sales and collections budget, and I don't know what the sales composition is, the percentage of sales that will go into credit. I don't know it. If I were lazy, I'll say I am waiting for the sales team, or I'm waiting for management. Why don't you build that component and then leave a placeholder? So we call something placeholder in a financial model. So one of the ways that you can do that is to select the entire row and then you mark it with a yellow shading so that it would always remind you that you need to do something. You don't have something complete and then you need to work on it. Once you work on it, you move on. When you get the input, all you need to do is to plug that input in and then it gets calculated. So I'm going to do the same thing here. So I'm going to say that my cash collections from customers' budget is the sum of my cash sales and the credit sales that I've collected. So let me create my subtotal here. So cash collections from customers. I put in my unit of measurement and then I add the two. So I can use my sum function or the auto sum to add these two. And press Control Enter. Control Shift right arrow. Control R to fill to the right. And then I can put in my subtotal. So I don't know what my credit sales collected is because I haven't computed it yet. When I compute it, I'll just come and plug it in here for it to work. So we want to quickly do that, and then we will plug that in. So we are going to create our credit sales collected. And we are going to create a sub heading here. So I can name this one credit sales collected as a sub heading. So credit sales collected. So how do I compute that? So the whole idea of the credit sales collected is that I have sold something to you and I am going to collect it. Now, the timeline for our model is quarterly. So every quarter contains 3 months. So given the analogy that I gave you, when I'm in January and I sell something to you in January, I'll collect it in February. So in the month of January, I'll have no collections for the things that I have sold. When I go into the month of February, I will sell again on credit, but I will collect what I sold in January. So what I collect in the month of February for the month of January is what we are referring to as the credit sales that is collected in the period. So you see that by the time I get to March, I have sold for January, sold for February, and sold for March. But I'll be able to only collect January and February because March has not ended yet. I'll collect what I sold in March in the month of April. So if you look at the assumption that we have here, you would see that anytime we sell things for 3 months, we collect 2 of them. So the ratio is a 2 to 3. So when we divide our day sales outstanding, which is the next 30 days, by the number of days in the quarter, we are going to have the amount that will be outstanding in that particular period. But we are going to collect 2/3 of that. We are going to collect 2/3, which is 2 months in a particular quarter. So let's get to it. So the ingredients that we are going to use, first of all, is that we are going to row anchor our credit sales here. So we'll press F4 twice. Press Control Enter, Control Shift right arrow, Control R to fill to the right. So you need to learn how to do this. Alternatively, you can begin with the equal sign for beginners. You can select credit sales, put the dollar sign here, and press Control Enter or just enter. Highlight it, position the mouse pointer here, and then drag it to the right. And then you will still have the same thing done. Now, let's go and bring in our assumptions. So we have the day sales outstanding. So we can highlight, we can drag the 2 here and drag it all the way to the right. We can choose to put in our row anchor, or we can choose to ignore it. It all depends on what we want to do. Okay. So at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply the comma style. I'm going to reduce the decimal places, and then I'll just apply my blue font type. If I were doing my financial models, or when I'm doing a full financial modeling class, we will not be doing some of these things. We will just maintain consistency by creating a cell style and applying it consistently. But the MOS exam doesn't focus on that. It focuses on how you're able to harness or use various tools in Excel. So I am going to now create my formula for the credit sales collected. Put my unit of measurement here. And then the formula is going to be, I am going to multiply the credit sales by one minus this over that. And let me explain. 30 days is what is outstanding. So when I do 30 over 90, I am going to get 1 over 3. And that is the sales that will be outstanding. So if 1/3 is outstanding, then it means that 2/3 have been collected. Okay, so the formula is going to be 1 minus the 1/3, which will give me the 2/3 or 2 over 3 as the amount of money that has been collected. So let me demonstrate that again for you to see. So I'm trying to say that equals this times the 30 days over the 90 days. Control Enter. It gives me 68. So if I try to compute 68 over the total here, I am going to get 1/3. So you see, I am having 0.333, which is 1/3 of whatever has been sold here will be outstanding. It means that I have not collected. But I am trying to compute what has been collected. Okay, so because I'm trying to compute what has been collected, I'll go and adjust my formula and tell Excel that Excel should subtract the 1/3 from 1 to give me 2/3. Okay, and then anytime I do that, I am going to get the right result. I'm going to explain why I am putting the brackets here. So it means that I am going to actually collect 136,600. That will be 2/3 over 66.7% of whatever has been sold. So that is the formula that we are going to put in there. Now, look at what would have happened if I did not introduce brackets into my formula. You see that the results I may have gotten will be wrong. the result I would have gotten will be wrong here. Now, what is Excel doing? When I go to the Formulas tab and I go to the Formula Auditing group, Excel uses what we call PEMDAS. Okay, Excel uses what we call PEMDAS. And what does PEMDAS stand for? So PEMDAS stands for parenthesis, P stands for parenthesis, E stands for exponentiation, M stands for multiplication, D stands for division, A stands for addition, and then S stands for subtraction. So Excel is trying to say that if you give it a very long equation to evaluate, it will first of all do anything in bracket first before it will look at anything in exponentiation, and this is a caret. Okay, before it looks at anything multiplication or division from left to right. Okay, anything division from left to right. I'm trying to pick the / key. Okay, let me use this one. Okay, I think my FN key is on. So it's trying to show something else. All right. So we use the / for the division sign. So this, I'm referring to this sign for division. Then we have addition, and then we have the minus sign for subtraction. Okay, so it follows what in mathematics we call BODMAS. Okay, brackets first, we have the power of or exponentiation, then division, multiplication, addition, and subtraction. So Excel is saying that when you give me an expression that contains different operations, I will do the parentheses first, the brackets first, and next look at exponentiation, and then next do division or multiplication or division, depending on which one comes from left to right. Excel computes from left to right, and then it will also look at whether it is addition or subtraction, depending on whether it is left to right. So let's look at how it is evaluating this formula. So when I select this, I go to the Formulas tab and I go to the Formula Auditing group and I click on Evaluate Formula. Okay, the expression appears here. So when I click Evaluate, it will turn the cell reference into the value. Now, you see that it is telling us that depending from what we have from left to right, multiplication comes from left to right. It comes first. So it is going to multiply the 1 by the 206,400. And then when it is done, it will pick the F105, which is the 30 days, and then F106, which is the 90 days, and then pick the average and then subtract 0.33 from the 206. So I often say that Excel doesn't make mistakes. Excel doesn't make mistakes. If Excel will make a mistake, then it is coming from you, the Excel user. So you need to understand the order of operations so that you can make your formulas right. Okay, this is assumed that it is presumed that the spreadsheet specialist knows these basics before jumping onto the MOS exam. You see, the exam can be very elusive. Okay, I've seen someone who joined the group, and then he wanted to take the Microsoft exam, the test that we indicated that you can take, and his behavior looks as if he's so overconfident. He's just downplaying whatever we're doing. But you know what? He couldn't make it. Okay, so the specialist exam requires that you pay attention to detail and you understand the concepts. It is not enough to probably view or go to YouTube and then watch a video or something. There are technical stuff, and that is what the exam or Microsoft wants you to understand. And then it can certify you, and then you can also flaunt your achievement. So we need to understand these bolts and nuts so that we can do it right. The exam actually requires humility. If you're very humble, you'll be able to take it and then pass and then have your credential. So let's understand some of these basics. Very, very important. So now that we've understood the PEMDAS, you see that immediately I put the bracket at the right place. So I can place the bracket here, and then I can get a different result. So there's the result that I am getting just by placing the brackets at a different place. Okay. So where you place the brackets tells Excel what it should do. What it should do. What it should do. So when I place my brackets here, I get this answer, but this is not accurate. Okay, this is not accurate. What is Excel going to do? Excel will multiply this and this, and it will be the same, and then subtract it from that. But what we really need to do, is that we need to put the bracket here. So we are telling Excel that divide F105 by F106, subtract that from 1 to get to thirds, and then multiply 2 thirds by the 206,400. And then you get what has been collected. So let's see how Excel is behaving here. So 206, it will work out the 30 divided by 90. So that is what is outstanding. And then we take that out. So this is what has been collected. And then we evaluate to get 137,600. Now we are not done when we do it right for the first one, because when we copy it to the right, we are going to have errors. The first error that we are seeing is that we are having a value error. And this error is telling you that you are trying to divide a number with a text, okay, or with a reference, in that case, a number. When we convert it, it doesn't make sense. So look at the formula evaluating to. So when I select this, it will evaluate, evaluate, evaluate. And it's telling you that you are dividing days by days. And that in itself is an error. Okay, hence this error. Now let's go to the div 0 error. It's telling you that you are dividing something by 0, and that doesn't make sense. So if you look at evaluate, evaluate, evaluate. So you are dividing 0 by 0, and then that is giving you an error. So where you place your dollar sign is very important. So in this case, the constants are in column F, so we need to apply column anchoring. Column anchoring to F105 and then F106 before we drag the formula to the right. So when we do this, you see that the error is gone, and then we can put the sum total here. You can put the sum function to add whatever we have here. Now, when we double this, you see that whilst this is moving, okay, so you see this is here. It's selecting this cell. So whilst these are moving relatively, the constants are being kept here absolutely. So we have now computed our credit sales that has been collected in the quarter. So all that we need to do is that whatever was outstanding on row 100, because we didn't have it, we have now computed it. All we need to do is to create another row anchor to link it. Put a dollar sign here. Then Control Shift right arrow, Control R to fill it to the right. So now you see that having plugged that in, automatically our cash collections from customers has been updated. So let me use the format painter to clear the yellow formatting that we have so that it's nice. And then we can bolden this one and highlight everything and apply the bold command. So that is how to create a placeholder. You are doing something, you don't have the full information, create a placeholder and continue. When you are done, it's just like in an exam room. When you are doing an exam, there are times when you may not have all the answers. So skip and go to what you can do best. When you are done, you get back and then you take your time to actually resolve it. Okay. Now that we have created our sales, our cash collections from customers' budget, let's wrap up with the last budget, which is so easy to do. So the last budget that we are going to create is the accounts receivables budget. So we're going to create our accounts receivables budget. So accounts receivables budget. So the accounts receivables budget is looking at what is outstanding and what has been collected and what has not been collected. So that's the last thing we are going to do. So if you look at whatever we have here, you see that we have made total sales of 516,000 in a particular period, okay? But we have only collected 445,200. So the outstanding is the difference between what we sold and then what we have collected. And that is what we need to keep an account of. So at the end of every period, we know very well that we will collect 2/3 and then 1/3 will be outstanding. We'll collect the 1/3 in the next period. So we need to keep an account of that. So anytime we are trying to create an accounts receivables budget, it leads us to a type of it leads us to something that we call a balance corkscrew. A balance corkscrew. We are dealing with balances. A balance corkscrew. So let me explain what I mean by balance corkscrew. So you're going to understand that very soon. Now pick your current account or your personal savings account that you have at the bank. At the start of every period, you have an opening balance. Now, when the month continues to move from day to day, you may go to the bank and make a deposit. When the days go ahead, you may make some withdrawals. At the end of the month, you would be interested in what your balance is, what your closing balance is. So you see that we have an opening balance, we have additions, we have drawdowns or deductions, and then that will give us a balance. So we are going to call this accounts receivables beginning. So we are going to add BEG to indicate beginning. You can put the opening balance. Okay, you can put the opening balance like this. And then you can do additions to accounts receivables. You can do subtractions from accounts receivables. And then you have a closing balance. So now let's assume that we have our units of measurements here like this. Type in GHS and then you drag them down. Now, we talked about column D. Column D is to indicate plus or less indicators. So from here, when you pick the opening balance, we are expecting you to add. So we put a plus here, and then you put a less here, and then you have a closing balance. So anybody who picks this will be able to understand that, oh, okay, in creating this balance, I pick the opening balance plus additions to the accounts receivables minus or less the subtractions from the accounts receivables to give me the closing balance. Now, if you pick your account balances, you will see that the opening balance comes from the closing balance of the previous period. So let's say that I am in the month of January. I begin with 10,000. I added 5,000, making 15,000, and I took out 2,000. I'm left with 13,000. So what this means is that in the next period, I am going to have an opening balance of 13,000. So this is what I'm referring to. So I began with 10,000, added 5,000, took out 3,000 or 2,000, and then I am going to be left with this plus this minus that. I'm going to be left with 13,000. So in the next period, I am going to begin with 13,000 as my opening balance. And then look at what I'm adding, what I'm subtracting, and then the next period becomes the opening balance, picking from the closing balance. And that is what we call a corkscrew. So you see that assuming that the next period I deposited 4,000 and then took out 9,000. And then I do my form again. I'm going to have 8,000. So the next period, I'm going to begin with 8,000 as the opening balance. So that conveys the idea of a corkscrew. So what is a corkscrew? You remember that a corkscrew is actually used for popping champagne. So look at how or why we call this a corkscrew. In the advanced Excel expert, Microsoft Office specialist, Excel expert exam, you are required to know how to use the formula auditing tools called trace precedents. So when I select this and I trace precedents, okay, then let's assume that I put a figure here. Okay, so I'm going to trace precedents. Okay, let me rather, because it's supposed to actually work. Okay, so there are no, okay, the formulas are not working here. So let me remove. So let me use trace dependence for you to see the idea of a corkscrew. So you see that this zigzag that we have here conveys the idea of a corkscrew. The closing balance becomes the opening balance of the next period in that order. So that conveys the idea of a corkscrew. So we're going to use the same thing to create our accounts receivables budget. So this is how we are going to set it up. We want the first period, which is January, to refer to the previous period. But the previous period, we are now starting. So we don't have any previous period. So for consistency of our model, we are going to begin with the equal sign, and then we will select column I114, this cell. That is the essence of column I, which is called the blank spacer, so that it can help us to have a consistent formula on the row by always referring to the previous cell. So when I press Control Enter, and then I fill this formula to the right, I can then put in my formula plus this based on what the indicators are here, minus that. Control Enter, and then I also fill this one to the right. So when I trace precedents, okay, you see this is the idea of a corkscrew. This is the idea of a corkscrew, just like we used to pop a champagne. So that is why we call it a corkscrew. So we can keep that in mind when we are building this. So the next thing, the final thing that we need to do is just to apply, to introduce our formulas in there so that it can just work fine. So I've just cleared whatever we have there. So the additions to the accounts receivables, are actually what we are going to see here as the 1/3, or the 90 divided by the 30 days. And that is what will be outstanding in every particular period. And then we know that in the following period, we are going to collect whatever is outstanding. So one of the things that we can do here is that we can create a quick session here and call it additions to accounts receivables. So with the additions to the accounts receivables, one beautiful thing about using the balances, okay, the creating a calculation block like this or modeling like this, is that you can use the idea of relative referencing, absolute referencing to copy the entire block of calculations that you have. You can do Control C like this to copy. and then you come and paste it here. So I have copied and pasted, but you can see that because I have not applied row anchoring here, I don't have the $sign. Because I copied and pasted, it is using relative referencing. And in fact, everything is leading into errors. So we want to always encourage you or to see the reason why it is proper for you to be using the row anchoring. In advanced Excel classes or models, we want to use this way of modeling. So I have introduced the $sign to apply my row anchoring. Now let me copy everything again and then see whether we are going to have an error. So when I paste the same thing that I pasted up there, look at the difference. So you see that because of row anchoring, whatever I copied from the top remains as it is. And then we don't have any errors. So let me delete this. And then I can use my find and replace to look up credit sales collected. And then I will replace it with additions to accounts receivables. And then I'll replace everything here. Okay, so that is the beauty of using copy and paste. So whatever I have here, I need it. I don't want the credit sales to change. I don't want days sales outstanding to change. I also don't want the days per quarter to also change. I don't want it to change. Okay, so all that I'm going to modify is that I am going to the formula and then I will just remove this 1 plus a 1 minus. So this time around, I'm just picking the 30 days, dividing it by the 90 days, and prorating the 206,400 to get what will be added to my accounts receivable, because this has not been collected. Okay. So technically, I would have highlighted all of this in yellow because I don't have the input. So now that I have modified this, I have calculated it, I can now come here and then plug in my additions to accounts receivables, do my row anchoring, because I don't know if I'll use it again, and then I'll fill it to the right. And then clear the fill, the yellow fill color. So all you need to do is always set up whatever you want to calculate, and then you take your time to calculate, and then you try to bring it back. So we are going to collect the same amount of money. Okay, we are going to collect the same amount of money that is outstanding. So I am going to demonstrate that here without a formula so that you can understand how this is going to work. Okay, so I am going to highlight all this area, and then I'll show this as an input cell. Okay, I'll show this as an input cell. And remove this too. So let's try to see if we can understand it. So we began the year in 2025 January we had just started. We didn't have any accounts receivable. So it was 0. Now, at the end of the quarter, March was outstanding. Okay, we had collected 2/3 of that. So January and February, March was outstanding. So because March is outstanding, all we need to do is that we are not able to collect the receivables for March. So this is going to be 0. So by the end of March, we have 1 month outstanding. But when we began the month of April in the next quarter, we already had March outstanding. Okay, so that March that was outstanding, April, May, we collected, but June is also outstanding. So we've added, but we have collected for the month of March here. So we are going to put here 6,800. So throughout the entire model, you see that 1 month will be outstanding throughout. So at the end of even December, you see that it is only December that has not been collected, because 1 month will be outstanding all the time. We will add and subtract. So it depends on the kind of policy that we are going to put in place. So I've just kept this one in a way for you to understand it. Okay, because basically we are collecting what will be outstanding in the next period. So based on the model that we have prepared, we've been able to create a unit sales and price budget, create a sales composition budget, create a cash collections budget, and then we've created an accounts receivables budget. We've done all these things, and then as you can see from the objective domain, we've been able to apply all these items that we have on the objective domain. There are other things that we can do to apply, or let's say to tick a number of things from the objective domain, but we want to use another illustration to demonstrate them so that we don't get bored with our sales and collections budget. But we are going to keep it when we get to applying or visualizing in terms of charts, spark lines. We are going to come back to this sales and collections budget that we have prepared, and then we'll play along with it. All right. Any question for me?